The clock on the wall read 2:17 p.m. Thomas adjusted the wrench in his hand. He was crouched beside the lift, tightening a bolt on a transmission line. The service door of the garage opened. A man in a tailored gray suit stepped inside. The man carried a flat white envelope. "Thomas Vance?" the man asked. Thomas stood up, wiping grease on his overalls. "That's me." "Registered delivery. Signature required." The man held out a small digital pad. Thomas took the pad. He signed with his thumb. The man handed him the envelope and turned, walking back out the door. The man did not look back. Thomas turned the envelope over in his hands. It was heavy, textured paper. The return address was stamped in raised silver foil. Albright and Stern, Legal Counsel. He put the wrench on the bench and ripped the envelope open. He pulled out a single sheet of paper. His eyes moved quickly across the letterhead. A co-worker, Mike, walked past, carrying a worn tire. "What's the paper, Thomas? Parking ticket?" Thomas folded the letter once. "A summons. Says I need to attend a reading of a will." "Who died?" Mike asked. "Michael Reed." Mike stopped. He put the tire down. "Michael Reed, the billionaire. That Michael Reed." Thomas looked at the letter again. "Says 4 p.m. downtown." "You know Michael Reed?" "Never met him. Must be a mistake." "Wrong, Vance." Thomas tossed the letter onto the passenger seat of an old Ford truck waiting for repair. He picked up the wrench and returned to the transmission line. The phone on the wall rang once. Thomas picked up the receiver. "Vance Motors." "Mr. Vance, this is Ms. Albright. Albright and Stern." The voice was sharp and professional. "I got your letter. There's a mistake. I don't know Michael Reed. Mr. Vance. The document is legally verified. We require your presence today. There is no error. I'm working. I can't leave this bay. The probate court will move forward regardless. But you need to understand the implications of the primary beneficiary's absence." Thomas stood straight. He looked at the transmission line. "Implications? $4 billion. That is the implication. Be here at 4 p.m. The line clicked dead. Thomas put the phone down. He stripped off his gloves and tossed them into a bin. He pulled the Ford key from the ignition. He put his wallet into his back pocket. Mike leaned against the tire. "You going?" $4 billion. I'm going to tell them they have the wrong guy." Thomas walked to his own car, an old sedan parked outside the bay. He opened the door and got inside. He drove out of the garage. Thomas stood in a marble-floored lobby. He gave his name to the security guard behind a polished mahogany desk. "Vance for Albright," the guard said into a handset. "Take the express elevator to the 35th floor," the guard instructed. Thomas walked to the elevator bank. He pressed the button. The elevator arrived instantly. He stepped inside. The door closed. He stepped out onto the 35th floor. The hallway was silent. He walked toward a heavy, unmarked door. He opened it. The room was a conference chamber. A long mahogany table dominated the center. 3 people sat on one side, 2 men and a woman, all dressed in expensive black attire. Ms. Albright, in a charcoal suit, stood at the head of the table. "Mr. Vance, you are 10 minutes late," Ms. Albright stated. Thomas walked to the only empty seat and pulled it out. He sat down. "I fix engines. This is still a mistake." Ms. Albright placed a thick leather-bound folder on the table. "These are Michael Reed's final wishes. I am required to read them to all listed beneficiaries." The older man, Alan Reed, leaned forward. "Albright, let's skip the formalities. The last-minute codicil is invalid. We will contest it." "The will is sealed, Alan. It is non-contestable," Miss Albright replied. She opened the folder. "We proceed." She read quickly, detailing various trusts and minor bequests. The 3 family members remained expressionless. Miss Albright stopped. She looked at Thomas, then back at the folder. "To Alan Reed, my brother, for his years of management, I bequeath the sum of $1. Alan's hand tightened into a fist on the table. "To Catherine Reed, my niece, and Daniel Reed, my nephew, I bequeath the sum of $1 each." The younger woman, Catherine, whispered, This is an outrage. Miss Albright looked directly at Thomas. And to Thomas Vance, for services rendered and faith restored, I bequeath the entirety of my remaining estate, including all controlling shares of the Reed Global Group, and liquid assets valued at $4 billion. Thomas did not react. He looked down at his hands resting on the table. Alan stood up abruptly. His chair scraped back on the marble floor. This is a clear case of undue influence. He is a scam artist, a mechanic. The will is verified by 3 independent firms and protected by a non-annulment clause, Miss Albright stated. She pushed a set of documents toward Thomas. Sign here, Mr. Vance. The assets are immediately transferred upon acceptance. Alan walked quickly around the table and stopped directly behind Thomas. Don't sign, Vance. We know what you are. We will expose you. Thomas reached out and picked up the pen. He looked at the signature line. The younger man, Daniel, stood up as well. He leaned over the table. We know a specific issue with the will. If you sign, the problem becomes yours. It's an immediate liability. Thomas put the pen back down. He looked up at Alan standing behind him. I am not signing anything yet, Thomas said. He looked at Ms. Albright. First, I want to know what services rendered means. I fix cars. I never met your client. Alan laughed sharply. He's buying time. We will force a settlement. There will be no settlement, Alan, Ms. Albright said. She opened another slim folder. Mr. Reed included a final private document detailing the exact moment Mr. Vance saved his life 10 years ago. It is completely verifiable. Thomas looked at the folder. Saved his life? Alan walked back to his seat and picked up his phone. He started typing rapidly. Miss Albright ignored Alan. She slid a keycard across the table toward Thomas. It was thick, black, and bore the company logo. This is your new access card, Mr. Vance. It activates the moment you accept the will. Until then, the company is in legal limbo. Thomas looked at the card. He looked at the 3 angry faces. He looked at the blank signature line. I am not accepting, Thomas stated, pushing the documents back. He stood up. I need to know what I did. Alan put his phone down. He looked at Thomas with a sudden, cold smile. You made a mistake, Vance. You should have signed. Now the transfer is paused, which means an alternate clause in the bylaws activates. A clause that allows the board to vote on an immediate acquisition. Ms. Albright looked sharply at Alan. The control override clause? That is only for a declared state of emergency. A non-blood heir who refuses to accept the controlling shares within 1 hour constitutes an emergency, Alan stated. He lifted his phone. The vote is in 10 minutes. If the board votes to sell, the Reed Global Group is liquidated. All assets are frozen and the will is voided. Alan stared directly at Thomas. You wanted to know what you did? You just destroyed $4 billion and my father's entire legacy by delaying. Now fix it. Thomas stood still by the table. Alan Reed watched him, his smile widening. The vote is at 4:30, Alan stated. A 2/3 majority liquidates the company. You have 20 minutes before the meeting starts. Miss Albright slammed her hand on the table. Alan, the emergency clause requires a written declaration of incompetence. The refusal to accept control is the declaration. Alan countered. He looked at Thomas. You have a choice. Sign now, accept the liability and take control before the vote, or walk out and let the board destroy the entire company. Either way, you get the problem. Thomas pushed his chair back into the table. He walked to the door. Where are you going, Vance? Alan demanded. To the source, Thomas said. He stopped at the door. Where is the daughter? Emily. She refused to attend the circus, Catherine spat out. Thomas looked at Miss Albright. Give me her contact. Miss Albright pulled a business card from her jacket pocket. She slid it across the table. Thomas took the card. He opened the door and walked out. He did not look back. Thomas stood in the courtyard of a small art gallery downtown. He was using his phone. The name is Vance. I need to speak to Emily Reed. She's busy, a woman's voice answered. Tell her the board is liquidating Reed Global in 20 minutes. A short pause. Hold. This is Emily. The voice was sharp and cold. I'm Thomas Vance, the mechanic. I just left Albright's office. And you're calling me to gloat? I didn't sign. The board is using the control override clause. They will vote to sell everything. That's Alan's work. He's been waiting for this, Emily said. It's what he wanted when my father died. I'm looking at the paper where you work. I'm coming in. Thomas ended the call. He walked through the main glass door of the gallery. He found the reception desk. Emily Reed, he said. Emily walked quickly toward him from a side office. She wore a simple navy blue dress. She stopped 2 feet away. She looked Thomas up and down, taking in his worn work pants and clean polo shirt. You're late, Emily stated. 15 minutes until the vote. Thomas held out the black access card from Miss Albright. I have this. Albright says I have to accept the will to take control. I haven't signed. Emily did not touch the card. Why are you here? You want me to tell you where the emergency board meeting is? I want you to tell me why your father gave me everything. I won't take it, but I won't let them destroy the company either. You are a fraud. Alan paid you to cause this chaos, Emily accused. If I was a fraud, I would have signed the transfer documents immediately. I'm here. Tell me what I did for him. Emily looked around the quiet gallery. She walked toward a small private office at the back. Thomas followed her. She closed the office door. She walked to her desk and opened a laptop. I don't know. He never spoke about you. He never spoke about anyone. I need to know the services rendered. If I walk in there with no information, Alan will crush me. Emily looked at the screen. She typed quickly. The private registry is password protected. I don't have the key. Think. What did your father value? Where did he keep things? Emily walked to a small bookshelf. She pulled down a heavy, old book, a collection of classical poems. She opened the cover. Inside, a small key was taped to the spine. She returned to the desk and inserted the key into the laptop's hidden port. The private registry opened. 10 years ago, February 12th. An incident at a downtown street market, Emily read aloud. My father was traveling without security. He suffered a severe cardiac event. He was administering a new medication. What happened to the medication? The vial dropped. It was crushed by a car tire. He had less than 5 minutes before the next dose was critical. Emily looked up at Thomas. Who found him? Me, Thomas said immediately. I was driving a delivery for the garage. It was a Saturday. I saw an old man on the ground. I stopped the truck. I pulled him to the side. And the medicine? He was holding the crushed vial. He kept pointing at his coat pocket. I checked it, found another vial. I helped him inject it. Then I waited for the ambulance. Emily nodded slowly. She walked back to the bookshelf. She pulled a heavy binder from the bottom shelf. She placed it on the desk. This is the Reed Global Group bylaws, Emily said. She flipped to a tabbed page. Section 4.1, the emergency power succession. She pointed to a line of dense text. The primary beneficiary must accept the inheritance. If they refuse, the board can vote to sell. However, the clause is annulled if the refusing heir initiates a documented, non-profit action within the hour. Non-profit action? Thomas asked. Something that directly uses the company's influence to secure an asset for public good. Not money, an asset. Thomas looked at the clock on the laptop screen. 4:22 p.m. The vote is in 8 minutes. What is the asset? Thomas asked. Emily pulled a small laminated photo from the binder. It showed an old, abandoned factory building on the city's east side. Before he died, my father was trying to buy this building, Emily said. It was the first factory he ever owned. He planned to turn it into a free technical college for vocational training. But he didn't buy it? The current owner refuses to sell to Reed Global. Alan made the owner angry 10 years ago. Now Alan is the only one who can buy it. And he will liquidate the company before he buys it for the foundation. Thomas looked at the picture of the factory. The address. Emily read the street address. Thomas grabbed the access card from the desk. He walked quickly to the office door. I need a document, a legally binding promise that Reed Global will fund the conversion of that factory into a college. I don't have signing authority. Write it down. Your signature. My signature. Timestamp it. It's an initiated action. Emily tore a sheet from a notepad. She wrote quickly. Thomas signed below her. He looked at the laptop clock. 4:25 p.m. Thomas grabbed the sheet. He opened the office door. I'll be back in 1 hour. If I succeed, I need you at the board meeting. You tell them what this factory means to your father's legacy. What are you going to do? Emily asked. I'm going to buy a building, Tommy said. He left the gallery and began running toward the street. The clock showed 4:26 p.m. Tommy stood in the street. He pulled out his phone and typed the factory address into the navigation app. It was 20 minutes away by car. He looked across the street. A black sedan with tinted windows was parked by a fire hydrant. Alan Reed's driver, Marcus, was leaning against the hood. Marcus looked directly at Thomas. Thomas put his phone away. He walked to the corner. He hailed a taxi that was passing by. He opened the back door. The taxi driver, a woman, looked at him. Where to? East Side. The old Henderson factory, fast. He looked in the side mirror as the taxi pulled away. Marcus was already in the black sedan, pulling out from the curb. The chase was on. You're in a hurry, the taxi driver commented. I need to buy a building before a corporate board liquidates a company. The taxi driver looked into the rearview mirror, then accelerated through a yellow light. Corporate liquidation is a valid reason. Thomas reached the factory. The taxi stopped. He paid the driver and stepped out. The black sedan pulled up 2 blocks behind him. Marcus was already getting out of the car. Thomas walked quickly to the main gate of the factory. It was secured by a heavy chain and padlock. He saw a small faded sign next to the gate. Property Management, Mr. Harrison, 5-5-0193. Thomas pulled out his phone and dialed the number. A man's voice answered. Harrison? Mr. Harrison, this is Thomas Vance. I'm the new primary beneficiary of Reed Global Group. I don't care if you're the Pope. I told that Reed family I wouldn't sell to them. I don't want to buy it for the Reed Group, Mr. Harrison. I want to buy it for a vocational college, for free workshops, for the kids on the east side. A pause on the line. They never told me that. The previous owner, Michael Reed, died before he could tell you. I have a notarized intent to fund the conversion right now. I need an address for your lawyer. My lawyer is Mr. Sterling. He's in his office downtown. You need to meet him before 5 p.m. Thomas checked the time. 4:45 p.m. I need to move faster. I'll meet him at his office. Thomas hung up. He turned and saw Marcus walking toward him quickly, holding a phone to his ear. Marcus stopped 10 feet away. Mr. Reed says you are not to involve yourself in any real estate transactions. Cease all activity. I'm acting on my own behalf, not Reed Global's, Thomas stated. He turned and started running down the street. Marcus shouted, You'll be sued for market manipulation. Thomas ignored him. He ran to the nearest bus stop. A bus pulled up instantly. He jumped inside. He walked to the back of the bus. He pulled out his phone and called Emily. I found the owner's lawyer. I have to get downtown and secure the building before 5 p.m. The board meeting has been delayed, Emily said. Alan needs more time to secure the votes. He's trying to pressure the members. Good. I need the lawyer's information for the building purchase and the maximum offer that can be made without board approval. Emily gave him the lawyer's name and office address. The maximum is 10 million, no questions asked. Use a holding corporation. I don't have a holding corporation. Use the name of the new college fund. The Phoenix Foundation. My father registered it last week. Thomas wrote it down. I'm heading to the lawyer now. Thomas arrived at the downtown office building of Mr. Sterling. 4:53 p.m. He burst through the double doors and walked to the receptionist. Mr. Sterling, I have an emergency real estate closing. Mr. Sterling, a thin man in a tweed suit, met Thomas in the hallway. You're the mechanic. I hear you're buying a factory. For the college. I have $10 million from the Phoenix Foundation. I need a purchase agreement drafted now. The cash will transfer tonight. The owner, Mr. Harrison, has a high asking price, $12 million. Thomas stopped. I can only authorize 10 without board approval. Then the deal is dead. He wants the price he asked for. Mr. Sterling started walking back to his office. Thomas followed. Wait. What is the value of the land underneath the factory? Mr. Sterling paused. The land value is $4 million. The building is $8. Then I'll buy the land. The Phoenix Foundation buys the land for $4 million. I'll lease the building from Mr. Harrison for $1 a year. The lease is for 99 years, and the foundation pays for all taxes and maintenance. Mr. Sterling turned back. He raised an eyebrow. You buy the land. He retains the building. But the foundation controls the operation. That keeps Mr. Harrison from selling it to Alan, but it costs you only $4 million. It's a non-profit action that secures the asset. Draw up the contract now. Mr. Sterling walked back to his desk. He began typing on his computer. Thomas sat down in a leather chair. He pulled out his phones and called Emily. I secured the asset. The Phoenix Foundation bought the land for $4 million. The building is leased. It is a non-profit action. The override clause is nullified, Emily confirmed. The vote is off. Alan failed. I'm coming to the board meeting now. The problem is not solved. Thomas hung up. 5:05 p.m. Thomas looked at the signed purchase agreement on the desk. He stood up. Mr. Sterling held out the final documents. Congratulations, Mr. Vance. You own the land. Now, go save the company. Thomas took the documents and ran out the door. Thomas stood outside the double doors of the boardroom on the 40th floor. He adjusted the collar of his shirt. Emily stood beside him. She looked at the factory purchase documents in his hand. $4 million. You just spent $4 million to avoid inheriting $4 billion. The purpose of the money was more important, Thomas stated. He looked at the heavy brass handle of the door. What happens in there? Alan will try to force a compromise. He'll offer you a massive buyout to leave, using shareholder funds. They want the company to remain in family hands, or at least under their control. Thomas nodded. He pushed the door open. The room was large and dimly lit. A long oval table seated 15 people. Alan, Catherine, and Daniel sat at one end. 10 other board members occupied the remaining seats. A large projection screen showed the current stock ticker. Alan stood up instantly. Mr. Vance, the vote is postponed. We understand you initiated a purchase. A questionable one, I might add. Thomas walked directly to the empty seat at the head of the table. He put the land purchase documents on the table and sat down. Emily sat next to him. The Phoenix Foundation secured the land for the vocational college. The control override is nullified, Thomas stated. The board chairman, Mr. Hammond, a man with white hair, cleared his throat. Mr. Vance, we represent the shareholders. You are the controlling shareholder, but we can vote to remove you as CEO. You have no experience. We require immediate stability. I agree, Thomas replied. I offer a solution. I will not be the CEO. I will not sell the company, and I will not sign the inheritance papers until the company's future is secured. Alan interrupted. This is ridiculous. We offer you a clean exit. $50 million. You walk away, we manage the estate and the chaos ends. Sign the termination agreement now. Thomas took a clean sheet of paper from the center of the table. He picked up a pen. He drew a small circle in the middle of the paper. This circle is Reed Global Group, Thomas said, placing the pen down. It exists to manufacture and distribute high-precision medical equipment. That was Michael Reed's vision. He looked at Alan. If I sell to you for 50 million, the company is broken up. Assets are liquidated. The medical equipment vision dies. That is what your brother wanted to prevent. Alan stood up. This is a business meeting, not a philosophy class. It's about control, Thomas countered, looking at the board chairman. I offer a new management structure. I will remain the controlling shareholder, but I will appoint 2 people to manage the company on a 2-year contract. If they succeed, I formally accept the will. If they fail, I transfer the shares to Alan. The board members exchanged looks. This was an unprecedented offer. Mr. Hammond leaned forward. Who are the 2 managers? The first is a non-profit director, someone who understands the original vision. Emily Reed. Emily looked at Thomas, surprised. Emily will head a new department, Global Outreach. She will manage the Phoenix Foundation and ensure the vocational college is built and funded by the company's non-core assets. She understands the name and the legacy. Mr. Hammond turned to Emily. Do you accept this role, Ms. Reed? It is a 2-year commitment to rebuilding trust. Emily looked at Alan, then back at Thomas. I accept. But if he tries to sell the company, I resign immediately. He won't sell, Thomas stated. The second manager is the current chief operating officer, Mr. David Chen. Alan threw his hands up. Chen is my appointee. He'll follow my orders. Thomas smiled, a slow, controlled movement. No, Alan. Mr. Chen is loyal to Michael Reed. He was the one who authorized the emergency funds for the vocational college land purchase 5 years ago, before Mr. Reed stopped the project. I know this because the property manager told me. Alan froze. His face went pale. I spoke to the property manager, Thomas continued, his voice steady. He said he hates you, Alan. Because 10 years ago, when Michael Reed was having a medical emergency, you showed up first. You found the crushed vial, but you did nothing. You watched him struggle, and then you walked away, letting him die because you wanted the company. The silence in the room was absolute. Catherine gasped. Daniel covered his face with his hand. Alan stood still. He walked slowly back to his chair and sat down. He did not look at anyone. The board must vote on this proposal immediately, Thomas stated. He looked at Mr. Hammond. The Vance Reed management contract. 2 years. Oversight by Emily Reed and David Chen. Controlling shares held by me. No sale, no liquidation. Mr. Hammond looked down the table. All in favor of the Vance management contract. 12 hands went up immediately. Alan, Catherine, and Daniel did not move. The proposal passes, Mr. Hammond declared. He stood up and held out his hand to Thomas. Welcome to the family business, Mr. Vance. You just saved the company. Thomas shook his hand. He then looked at the silent Alan. Alan, you have 1 hour to resign your position from the board, Thomas said. If you refuse, I will release the full details of the attempted murder and your failure to assist Michael Reed to the authorities. The choice is yours. The board members filed out of the room, talking in hushed tones. Only Thomas, Emily, and Ms. Albright remained. Emily looked at Thomas. How did you know about Alan and the property manager? I didn't, Thomas admitted. The property manager only told me Alan made him angry 10 years ago. I saw the connection. Alan tried to liquidate the company today. He tried to let Michael Reed die 10 years ago. It's the same action. I just used the anger I saw in the property manager to make the accusation. Ms. Albright opened a small leather briefcase. She pulled out a thick, sealed envelope labeled, "For Thomas Vance only." Michael Reed anticipated this, Ms. Albright said. He knew Alan would try to liquidate the company. He knew you would refuse the money. This is his final communication to you. You are required to read it before signing the 2-year management agreement. Thomas took the envelope. He broke the seal and pulled out a single handwritten note. He read the note silently. He folded the note and placed it back in the envelope. He slid the envelope across the table to Emily. You should read this. Emily looked at him, then took the envelope. She read the note. She looked up at Thomas, her eyes wide. Miss Albright watched them both. The contents? The note says, "I am not the true inheritor," Thomas stated. Emily nodded. It says the sole purpose of the will was to draw Alan out, force his hand, and expose his true intent to the board. It was a pressure test. Michael Reed knew Alan would try to liquidate the company if a non-blood heir was named. Thomas continued. The inheritance was the trap. The money was the bait. What about the $4 billion? Ms. Albright asked. The note says the real inheritor is the Phoenix Foundation, Thomas explained. The company was always meant to be controlled by the foundation, run by the employees, for the purpose of the vocational college and research. Emily finished reading the last line of the note aloud. You saved not my life, Thomas. You saved my faith in people. You are the only man who walked away from the money that I worked my entire life to possess. The company now belongs to the purpose you created. Thomas walked over to Alan's abandoned seat. He picked up the piece of paper where he had drawn the circle. He tore it in half. He looked at Miss Albright. I will sign the management contract, but I will immediately transfer the controlling shares to the Phoenix Foundation. The foundation is run by the company's employees, as the note suggests. That is a legally complex transfer, Mr. Vance, Miss Albright warned. It is the final wish of Michael Reed. I will keep only what I already had. Thomas walked to the briefcase where Miss Albright was holding the official will documents. He pulled out a pen. I will sign the acceptance of the will. Then I will sign the transfer of all assets to the foundation. I require a single clause to be added to the foundation charter. The deed to Vance Motors Garage will be transferred to me. That is all I keep. Miss Albright took a moment, then opened the charter. She wrote the clause by hand. Thomas watched her. He signed the will acceptance document. He signed the asset transfer document. He signed the clause for the garage deed. The entire process took less than 3 minutes. Emily watched him sign the last document. She did not say anything. Miss Albright closed the briefcase. The estate is settled. The foundation is the controlling entity. You, Mr. Vance, are the owner of Vance Motors, free and clear, and nothing else. Thomas nodded. He walked to the door. Emily stopped him. You saved the entire company. You saved my father's legacy. I fixed the problem, Thomas said. He stopped at the door. He turned the handle. What about Alan? Emily asked. Thomas pulled the door open. He has an hour to resign. The police will handle the rest. Thomas walked out the door and into the hallway. He began walking toward the elevator. The sound of a cell phone ringing came from the room. It was Emily's phone. She answered. Yes? The police are at Alan's penthouse. Emily looked down at the paper where Thomas had drawn the ice circle and torn it in half. She looked at the door Thomas had just walked through. She then looked at Miss Albright. Miss Albright, please prepare the documents for the sale of all remaining Reed family property. It will be a donation to the Phoenix Foundation. Thomas stood in the garage bay. He was wearing his blue overalls. He was under the same old Ford truck, tightening the same bolt he had left unfinished days ago. The phone rang. He picked up the receiver. Vance Motors. It's Emily. Just wanted to confirm. The foundation is fully operational. We purchased the machinery for the vocational college. Mr. Chen is running the core business efficiently. Good, Thomas replied. He placed the receiver between his shoulder and ear, then turned the wrench one more time. Alan resigned, Emily continued. He's facing charges for corporate manipulation. Catherine and Daniel are gone. They had nothing to sell. That's what happens when you try to sell a person's trust, Thomas said. He hung up the phone. He slid out from under the truck. He picked up a can of engine degreaser. He sprayed down the transmission line he had been working on. Thomas stood at his mother's kitchen counter. He was helping her fill out a medical form. The paperwork came through, Thomas said. The garage deed. It's entirely yours. No more mortgage. His mother looked at the deed. She put her pen down. You kept nothing else? Just this. And the tools. $4 billion, Thomas. It was never mine. I was just a lockpicker. He picked up a box of old tax records and carried them to the basement door. He walked down the wooden stairs. 3 weeks later, Thomas was working on the Ford truck again. The bay door was half open. A black sedan pulled up outside, not Alan's car, a smaller, older black sedan. Emily stepped out of the driver's side. She was wearing a simple jacket and dark jeans. She carried a paper bag. She walked into the bay. She stopped next to the truck. "The car is fixed, by the way," Thomas said. "I know. I was waiting for it to break down again." Emily walked to the old steel bench. She put the paper bag on the bench. "I stopped by the college," Emily said. "It's running a night class now. Welding." "Good." Thomas picked up a screwdriver. "I came here to tell you that I resigned from the foundation. Mr. Chen can handle it." Thomas put the screwdriver down. "Why?" "I have a new job. I'm starting a non-profit consulting firm. We help family companies transition their wealth into charitable trusts. We call ourselves the Phoenix Trust." "Sounds like your father's work," Thomas said. "It's what I learned from the mechanic." Emily opened the paper bag. She pulled out 2 paper cups with plastic lids. "Coffee! Black!" Thomas took the cup. He walked to the edge of the bay and leaned against the counter. Emily stood beside him. They both looked out at the street. "I had a carpenter make something for you," Emily said. She pulled a small framed wooden sign from the bag. Thomas took the sign. It was heavy oak, engraved in crisp lettering. He read the text aloud. "Inherited by mistake. Managed by choice." He turned the sign over in his hands. He walked to the wall next to the main office door. He picked up a nail and a small hammer. Thomas hung the sign on the wall. He stood back and looked at it. He took a sip of his coffee. "The next delivery of high-precision parts for the Foundation's new medical facility is going out tomorrow morning," Emily said. "I'll have my truck ready," Thomas replied. Thomas and Emily stood outside the garage bay. They finished their coffee. Emily walked to her car. She opened the door. "I'll send you the specs for the new delivery truck," Emily said. "The Foundation needs something more reliable than that old sedan." "I'll fix the sedan first," Thomas replied. He tossed his empty cup into a bin. Emily smiled. She got into her car and drove away. Thomas walked back into the garage. He picked up a piece of sandpaper and began sanding the hood of the old Ford truck. The sun moved across the floor. Thomas stopped working. He looked at the sign on the wall. "Inherited by mistake. Managed by choice." He picked up his tools and returned to the truck. He started working again. The story was over.